Hello and welcome to High Tales of History. It's a history podcast where two sisters get high and take a hazy trip through history, and we surprise each other with a story from the past. I'm Laurel, your older sister.
I'm Katie, the younger sister. I don't
Here
know
we
why
are.
I do like a Sailor Moon thing every time you notice that. I'm like,
Moon. Yes.
What are you doing? You're not cool, Katie. Stop. You eat blocks of cheese in stress. You're not cool. But luckily, I am regular.
That's a good thing to be when in general, but especially when you eat lots of cheese. So Sailor Moon here and we are on episode 96 in total. 96. How about that? It is season 5, episode 2. Welcome into the Smoke Circle, everyone. Glad to have you here. How are we doing? How are we doing, everybody? You know, it's what history. Sweet history. Is being made every day, isn't it?
Every
Goodness gracious, every day it's getting made, and we are all a living part of it. So I'm glad you're here paying attention, listening up, listening in. We're all here together to talk about the past.
Oh, I've got a good one for you.
Really?
Just you wait. I mean, it's a good one, champ. I'm just saying, like, this is an important one for today.
Excellent. Gosh, I cannot wait. I hope you can't either. So sorry. I know that you guys are all getting this episode a little bit late. I've been down with the sickness, as Disturbed would say.
I had no reason to laugh like that. I didn't know you knew that song to make the reference.
Oh yes, I do. I'm full of surprises. I am an enigma.
You know?
An enigma that had the damn flu or something earlier this week. It kicked my ass. So I am sorry that this episode is out late. And that we're recording
champion.
it late.
We got to take care of our health.
Got to take care of the health. I was like, oh man, I got to delay it the next episode another week. I hate doing it, but
it's sicky
healthy
season.
Yeah, back at it. I do have a little bit of brain fog, so it's fun. You would be in a little high with a little brain fog, and you're like,
that's gonna go smoothly.
What are you gonna get? So how are you doing, Katie? What are you on? What are you smoking? What are you imbibing in? How have you been doing?
I've got a strawberry.
Yes.
I'm on a half of a strawberry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in water. And a spoonful of peanut butter.
Helps the medicine go down. Nice. Okay. Very slowly it swallows down. Yeah. Don't get sued by Disney. All right. So
yeah, because they have a lot of money and a lot of lawyers, and we would definitely lose.
We would lose.
But yeah, the half a strawberry and H2O and some good old PEANUT butter. Wait. I don't think I spelled peanut right, but whatever.
I know. I think you did.
Did I?
The brain fog's not letting me remember 2 seconds back, but yeah. I think you did. It feels like it could be right. I'll be listening to this later in editing, being like, "No, she did not."
What art thou imbibing in this evening?
Thank you for asking. I am imbibing. I've got some coffee to raise important. That energy level, which is good. Yeah. And then I took it's strawberry lemonade flavored. It's strawberry lemonade flavored, but it kind of tastes like also weed. That, you know what I mean? It's like strawberry lemonade.
Is it my brand?
No, it's
okay, because their strawberry lemonade's not bad. Okay,
it's lemon bean is the strain. Lemon bean is the strain.
So if you go look at my brand when it's on sale, there's a pink lemonade. Check it out.
Okay, I am really excited to hear about your history tonight.
Immediate.
Yeah.
You should have seen me trying to do this in mittens. Why did I do that? It's the shocker, dude. 2 in the pink, 1 in the sink.
But I did it Sailor Moon style. I meant to give him the horns to the Sailor Moon style, and I just went,
yeah! Fuck yeah, champ!
So embarrassing.
Man.
Okay.
Oh, that weed's hitting good today.
I am sweating. So anyway, something that we are something that we are trying to do this season. We're attempting this. Let us know. Like the phone lines are open, people. Like, let us know how you feel about the idea of what this is going to sound like. But over the course of this season, for season 5, we wanted to have each episode as sort of an overall topic. Say, for example, I'm pulling these out my back pocket, women's history, or weird or strange history, or World War II era history, or
Russian
19th
history.
century. Just pulling our theme together a little bit, but still allowing for a lot of creativity within that. So, like, if it was World War II, you could do an actual World War II story, or something within that time period. You know, you can kind of be creative with it, but we're thinking it might group our stories together a little bit. So, like, for better, you can kind of have more like a cohesive theme while you're listening.
It'll be easier for them when I feel like you go to look at an episode, like,
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll have a theme. You won't have to like scroll and be like it won't be like we've had some that when they mash up, you're like, well, that was quite the whatever. Like, we'll have like Ragnar Lothbrok and then like the history of glitter.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wow, what a intersection.
Yeah. And with all of these, you know, I mean, sure, there's probably some episodes that you listen to, you're like, oh, I love this topic. And then the next story, you're like, oh, this isn't my thing. But, you know, it might introduce you to new things. But yeah, we're hoping that it just makes things a little bit easier to search. So if you're really feeling like, oh, yeah, they're talking about World War II stuff, cool, awesome, I'm in.
Yeah, leave us a comment. Let us know, because that helps. It helps make the show better for you.
Exactly.
And probably me.
It's kind of, you know, it might be a fun way to listen and just, we want to see if you love it or not. If you want us to go back to completely randomness, then sure. But it'll still allow us a lot of freedom. I demand chaos.
Always.
So today, the theme is going to be women's history. Katie's got a double whammy of women's history and Black history. This was supposed to be coming out on February 28th. So
we're
plus
close.
Also, fuck what anybody in our government says. Black history is not just in February; it's all year long.
I was going to say, you can talk about Black history
it exists
anytime.
outside of 28
However,
days. Yeah,
I've heard a lot of people online when they are talking and interviewing people about Black history, and they're like, "We want a longer month." That hurts my feelings. You know why? Why is Black History Month in February, Laurel?
Because of Frederick Douglass.
Yes.
And Frederick Douglass was born around Valentine's Day. Definitely
is around when he was born. You know, somewhere around there. So, like, people, that tells me right there you don't know Black history. I can tell right now, because you should know that. I don't know what it is. I was quoting him to someone the other day, and they're like, wow, dude, you're, like, really passionate about Frederick Douglass. I was like, it wasn't on purpose, but, like, I guess it just kind of happened that way. Like, I don't know. He's a man to be admired, I suppose. Like, I take a lot of his, like, ideologies, like, his whole, like, we have to, even if there's somebody that you really can't stand their opinions and stuff like that, we have to still be kind to each other and work together so we can actually affect change, as opposed to just turning to anger, you know. That's not to say he didn't believe in fighting for your rights, but, like,
I mean, sometimes you just gotta punch Nazi in the face, though.
Yeah.
But also, yeah.
I'm not gonna say
come together. No. Maybe punch Nazi in the face, but still
not gonna say no. But yeah, just like a lot of his, just kind of how he lived his, I mean, think about it. Like, he had to leave the country like several times for fear of people coming after him. And I don't think a lot of people know that. So, yeah, so apparently I'm just weirdly passionate about Frederick Douglass. Should he be on the $20 bill? Probably. Looking at you, United States Treasury.
Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, they
well, I do love me some Harriet, but again, I'm being passionate about Frederick right now, so.
Fair. Actually, I would just, I came back from Coventry, which was a place where where Frederick Douglass spoke. Yeah. He did a circuit of talks there, and he spoke actually near the university that I was at there. So
there you go.
Yeah, he's quite a guy. Quite a guy. That's an understatement.
You should definitely listen to episode 2 about him.
Episode 2. Yeah.
Just putting it out there. Champion.
All right. Champion. Do you feel like the champion of
No
bottle leaf grinder?
Feel like the champion of this.
It's back. It's back, baby. So if you're a new listener and you're like, what in the actual fuck are they thinking they're doing here? Do they realize they're a podcast and they're doing a visual form of, yes, we do.
Do we care? Also, no.
We started doing this because we didn't know how to, like, a lot of things that we have from the show are things that we did on the first or second episode, and Panic did them.
Stuck.
And it just stuck. Like, get money, get high, give love. I was just going, and get money, get high, get, like, and I was like, this is the stupidest thing. And I was like,
why though? Why?
Because it's dumb. Basically, it's rock, paper, scissors. So rock is bottle, leaf is paper. Grinder's the one that changes. We make like a little, we make it's like a little dead
lotus
spider.
Flower?
Or a lotus flower. Okay, so
went a lot less like goth with that.
Hand against, back of your hand against your palm with the little like legs, your fingers up in the air is the grindies of the grinder.
Yes.
So that's our little thing, and that's how we figure out how to go first, because we can't think of a way that traumatizes Katie more or is more efficient. So
I have extreme anxiety over this. I hate this, but
here we go.
Buccaneers.
Bottle, leaf, grinder, shoot. Katie ground my leaf. She's going first.
All right, welcome back, Smoke Circle. Today we are diving into some Black history, as Laurel mentioned, and a bit of women's history. Bit of a double banger for you. Laurel, what is... Question time. Laurel's like, shit, I thought I was just going to sit and answer. Incorrect.
No, I'm leaning in. I am leaning into the moment and the opportunity.
Excellent. What is one of life's most meaningful and profound events? It's kind of ironic because we actually talked about it right when we got on before we started recording.
Say birth?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Fucking oath. Well done, Laurel.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
I
was hoping you were not, but anyway.
Birth. Pub trivia, anybody. You just holler at your girl and she
incorrect.
Will come.
Music trivia. She knows the album, the year, the artist. I was watching someone else do that, and I was like, holy shit. I was like,
impressive, right?
Bet you my sister could beat you. Laurel's like, no, because I'll know the weird banjo music and the metal. You'll know everything else.
We're going to be the best. Like, and plus,
there
if they
ever
ever have
was.
this, yes.
We're going to be the best there ever was.
Like, Team
Like, no
Ash.
one ever was, dude.
Yeah, I know. I almost said, like, Team Rocket, but then I was like,
nope. But
nope. We're blasting off again.
You're close. Okay, birth. Yes, birth.
Okay,
birth marks the beginning of new life, signifying a moment of creation and transformation that leaves a lasting impact. Also something we talked about. From a super obvious biological standpoint, birth is what is necessary for life to continue for every species, right?
Mm-hmm.
Down to the core. You have to reproduce or the species doesn't survive. For humans, that means that the knowledge and expertise of those that facilitate birth are invaluable, right? Because we're communal beings.
Amen.
Kind of like little ants, but like less marchy. Yeah?
Oh no, the edibles just hit just now.
This is going to be a great time.
Okay, got this.
Traditionally, through the history of the human race, it would fall to matriarchs or any older, really female, let's just a matriarch. Anyway, matriarchs, I'm going to not over-explain the word that I chose, who pass down their knowledge from birth from generation to generation. So today, we are talking about the women that helped birth a nation. The midwives, y'all. And doulas. Yeah. I'll throw them in there because they kind of evolved from the same thing. But midwives and doulas. We're focusing on the essential role of Black midwives throughout American history.
Oh, hell yeah. Ready.
So for Black History Month, it's a great time, and we're just next to it right now. So listen, give me a break.
Yeah. Well, this would have been...
It would have been...
In time, yeah.
But again, I can talk about this anytime.
Yeah.
So for Black History Month, it's great to reflect on important unseen history and how it truly impacts our present. Black midwives brought traditions from their homeland, i.e. Africa, well, the continent of Africa. There's a lot of lands within that land, within another land, and then you put that land in another box, and then you send that box, sorry. So they brought traditions from their homelands, and the means to have a spiritual, ancestral, and healing birth are often skimmed over in history and discounted, or just not talked about literally at all.
Mm-hmm.
These women's faces and stories should not be lost in the sea of medical advancement, because there's so many ways that they gave us the natural, quote unquote, birth we would recognize today. In their absence in culture now, it plays a huge role on why we see Black mothers and babies dying at an alarming rate. Yes, it's...
Okay.
People probably don't know this. I know this, but I'm a weirdo who literally just follows a bunch of midwives and doulas because for some reason I think birth is like fascinating. So I'll just open my Instagram and someone's just crapping a baby out in a pool. And Blake's like, why is that your Instagram feed? And I'm like, why is it not yours? Birth is natural and normal. Anyway.
Crapping a baby out.
All right, bringing a baby aside, whatever you want me to say. I'm just saying, like, I'll be in like public and that's the first thing that everyone sees, and I'm like, well, get over it.
Oh, she literally showed me this. Like, she goes, see, I told you.
I was like, this is literally it. And you're like, oh my.
I'm like, she's not kidding.
It's normal.
There it is.
Okay?
Yeah.
It needs to be normalized.
It's normal.
I think it's weird that it's not, but what do I know?
Where do you think babies come from? I mean, right? You know?
Again, the most basic biological function of reproduction. Babies. So, hello. So in the U.S. today, Black women who give birth die at a rate of 3 to 4 times higher than their white counterparts. In addition to that, the mortality of the infants is also much lower, being about twice as likely as white infants, basically. The mortality rate is twice as high.
Yeah.
In 2019, the CDC reported that 98.6% of women in the United States gave birth to children in hospitals. Sometimes it's easy for us today to overlook the, I guess, the comfort and the privilege of having a prepared maternity ward with all the benefits afforded about technology and stuff during birth. Yeah. So before the 1930s, women typically gave birth at home surrounded by relatives, female friends, and midwives. Those attending were responsible for not only supporting the mother emotionally through the pain of labor, but also preparing necessary tools, supplies, get some towels and some hot water. It's what we all hear, right? When someone's like fucking yelling about it. I'm like, why? What is the hot water going to do? You can fucking pour it on her? Like, that's not going to work. Anywho, no, I don't pretend to know what I'm doing. I'm not a trained midwife. Thank fuck. So, so they're going to prepare necessary tools, supplies, ensuring general hygiene, administering medicine, and monitoring both the woman and child long before and after birth. And we're going to rewind here for a second. In the 1600s, Europeans brought enslaved African midwives to the U.S. Basically, they just brought a bunch of enslaved Africans, and the midwives came with. So with them, they brought the traditions of birth, motherhood, and midwifery from wherever they were, their hometown, home country. The African midwife was more than just a birth worker or a baby catcher, however. They traditionally were seen as spiritual healers, counselors, and they helped the mom through all the highs and lows of postpartum. Like, it's a really full, all-encompassing job, which includes breastfeeding support and things like cooking and cleaning. Like, they'll come over and do that and help so mom can focus on, like, momming, you know.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the mid to late 1600s, while still enslaved, in the U.S., these Black midwives and their traditions became the primary source of care for prenatal, birth, and postpartum care for all women in the U.S. Like, everybody had a Black midwife. That's why this was one of those, shout out to one of my Instagram accounts I called the Badass Mother Birther. I know, right? She had shared this for Black History Month, and then I follow the account now. I'll go back and look at it and remind you before we're done with my story. The account that I follow now, specifically, she's a Black midwife. And they're talking about, like, what the statistics I gave you. By the way, those statistics are from 2025 and, like, 2024. Like, they're current. They're not just from, like, a couple of years ago. Like, that's actually still a statistic now. So what she's doing is making birth safer for people of color. That's the whole idea. So,
good.
But shout out to them. That's how I came upon this story. And I remember I was sitting there because I was working on another story, and I was like, I'm not feeling as passionately about this right now. And I was like, no, I want to talk about the other one. And I found that, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. This is great. So, but that specifically, when I said for all mothers in the U.S. at that time, probably really excluding Indigenous because they had their own. A lot of midwives were either Black or Indigenous, actually. or were immigrants from another country. When I say birthed a nation, I chose that very purposefully. That is exactly what we're talking about today. So, slave owners used
and not the birth of a nation.
No.
No. Exactly.
Nope. I forgot about that.
Not that one.
No, thank you. But anyway, we're not talking about that.
We're talking about that.
We're talking about birthing a nation.
Right.
Which is what these women did. So, back in ye olden days, the slave owners used these medical practitioners to ensure the health of their enslaved women were reproducing healthily, obviously, with newborn infants so they could expand their labor force because, obviously. And it was also common for midwives to attend the slave masters' wives during birth as well. When I said all of the midwives, everyone, I mean it, everybody. A good midwife might receive pay for their labor and be allowed to journey long distances to work as well, granting them a level of mobility that was rare for most enslaved individuals at the time, obviously. As a result, these medical practitioners could maintain community connections and even ancestral records, even when households are disbanded or certain family members were sold off and whatnot. Because they could travel around like that, they could keep some of that alive. So they had a really important role, not just in America at the time, but also within their own communities. So
that's really interesting.
Yeah, like super important people that we've never talked about. And I was like, this is fucking nuts. I gotta tell people about it.
Yeah.
That's usually what happens on this podcast. I'm like, holy shit, I found out this crazy thing. I might be roasted as hell, but I gotta tell you about it.
That's the whole aesthetic and vibe of this show. It's like, guess what I found out this week?
Passionate. So after emancipation, a lot of the African American midwives, known at the time as granny midwives, continued to work with both Black and white women in the rural and remote parts of the South because there's no hospitals, because you're out in the middle of nowhere and the closest hospital is like 2 days journey. So good luck.
Yeah.
So oftentimes hospitals are rarely accessible, and there were few willing or trained doctors available to serve those populations, especially in obstetrics. So making midwives the only viable option for expectant mothers. So once again, still here, doing important work. Like, holy crap. So prior to the creation of a formal medical education in obstetrics and gynecology, midwives were the sole experts in the birth, work, and medicine, and they were relied on heavily on their Native American and African American, because I said there were both, knowledge of plants and indigenous healing procedures, right, to keep everybody safe and alive. For millennia, birth work is considered a female occupation or women's work. Men were not around. I don't know if they weren't allowed. A lot of times they weren't allowed, but get the fuck out. This is a woman's world kind of thing when it came to this type of work. So that was until obstetrics and the professionalization of medicine were introduced into the mainstream culture of the U.S. during the 1700s. So as the popularity in hospitals and doctors began to rise, so did the false claims of Black midwives and other out-of-hospital births, of doctors accusing them of high mortality rates due to lack of education, skill, cleanliness, calling midwifery a primal and, I quote, a relic of barbarism and superstitious. Which is kind of how I feel like people talk about it today, yeah. Hold on, we're in the middle of a paragraph. Don't interject yet. Yeah. Laurel's like, oh, okay.
I'll sit back.
When in reality, the largest motivation for moving birth out of the home was the monetized hospital and doctors' practices. This was at the time when modernization was most important and racism and slavery were still common in the 1700s, right? Still happening. 1700s, right. People, the American Civil War wasn't fought until 1861. That's how far away we are at this right now. So just to give you an idea of how kind of crazy that is. Shooting ahead to the 1800s, however, the holistic birth and motherhood care brought over by the enslaved African women and midwives had grown into a beautiful African-American art that was almost completely replaced by hospitals with white male doctors in the middle in middle and upper class communities. So a lot of people, that's kind of where it moved over to. But the Black midwives stayed very active in the poorest communities around the U.S. They were still responsible for up to 75% of births, and that lasts all the way up into the 1940s.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe this isn't a topic we don't know more about. Like, when you kind of find out about that, I was like, wow, that's like really shocking to me.
Okay.
Yeah, especially in their communities, right? Because I said how back in like 1700s, they were allowed to travel between and maintain familial ties between, enslaved individuals who were sold off, right? Because they weren't treated like people. So they kept those familial ties alive and would write shit down so that you would know who you were related to and stuff like that. So it was around this time, think around the 1940s, that states began creating laws to prohibit the practice of lay midwives, which is what it kind of like the term kind of moved into, was lay midwives. So basically I feel like it's just kind of a way to what's the word I'm looking for? Not like marginalize, but discredit, kind of like a way to discredit them, to be like, oh, the layman's midwife, like, the average run-of-the-mill everyday broom closet lady, like, yeah, kind of discrediting all the years of knowledge and practice that this person has, not let alone the generations. Because if you're coming from Africa is like right where the seat of civilization is. Hundreds of years of knowledge, like that's not a small matter. So it was around this time, think about around the 1940s, the states began creating laws to prohibit the practice of midwife, and some even outlawed home birth midwife completely. Seems purposeful. So once the field of medicine became professionalized, for those of you that can't see, I'm quoting, and legitimized by the legal system, with the invention of the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology in 1927, physicians sought to dominate the field of birth work with primary practitioners, right? Their claim to jurisdiction, it spurred racist propaganda and campaigns depicting Black midwives as caricatures, falsely accusing midwives of being incompetent, witches. We talked about that in my witches episode. They are always discredited because they're crazy, right? They discount the power of women and like I said, I just said it, the centuries of knowledge passed down. This isn't nothing. So they would say that they were incompetent, witches, unclean, savages, and untrustworthy. These physicians also lured white women in to trust them because they offered innovative, quote, quote, pain relief options such as opioid tampons and mercury. Yeah, I'm glad that you had the same blink I did. I was like, did I read that right? That's nuts. What the hell, dude? Like, how are infant mortality rates then? I'd like to know. Probably not great.
Fucking hell.
Actually, I'm going to tell you about it.
Opioid tampon.
What? Isn't that insane?
That's the name of my punk band. Hey, Chicago! I'm opioid tampons.
What are the opioid tampons?
1, 2, 3, 4. It's our debut single, Tetanus on a Thursday night. Like, gosh.
Yeah, crazy, right? Holy crap.
No. Okay. This is why that's so dangerous. That's all so dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm back in the room. Okay.
So the public perception of midwives began to shift as the midwives who had for centuries in the Americas served as the primary maternal and infant health care providers, they were now deemed illegitimate, right? Toss it out. It's not good anymore.
No.
These smear campaigns were supported by the white male physicians who were the founders and members of the state boards of health, which controlled and were able to care and treat for women in childbirth, right? So they're the ones making the rules and doing all that. So by the 1900s, white male physicians attended approximately half of the births, despite having little to no training in obstetrics. As privatized medicine grew in popularity in the United States, out-of-hospital births fell from 100% to 44% by 1940.
It's a lot.
Unfortunately, this change was mostly fueled by the general medical practitioners whose inadequate, this is where we're talking, I've said I'll talk about it, I'll touch on it a little bit. They had inadequate obstetric education because they had a general lack of hygiene, unsafe delivery practices, and they themselves created high maternal mortality rates. And this rise in the mostly preventable deaths compelled the government to intervene, subjecting midwives and physicians alike to state health regulations. So it's kind of more like present day, like how we would notice it, because now they're both controlled by state regulations.
Right.
I've included in here that I'll bust through pretty quick a list of laws and educational restrictions and campaigns against midwifery, basically that led to dismantling the practice of the Black women being midwives, basically. The first one was in 1910. The Flexner Report recommended hospital deliveries and the abolition of midwifery. The study has since been recognized for its racist, sexist, and classist approach to medical education. And then in 1914, they introduced the twilight sleep, which was an amnesiac given to women by white physicians, preventing any memories of giving birth, which is somehow more terrifying, actually, than giving birth. In 1915, Dr. Joseph DeLee, a prominent obstetrician, called pregnancy and childbirth dangerous, quote unquote, and evil, still quoting. Dr. DeLee promoted the use of forceps, sedatives, ether, and other interventions that needed hospital-level care. He argued that midwives were incompetent. The Department of Indian Affairs passed legislation that moved births from home to the hospital. And in 1921, the Shepherd Tower Infancy Protection Act became a federal law and encouraged states to develop their own maternal and child health legislation. Before these changes, lay midwives practiced mostly without restrictions. The new laws severely reduced their practice in many states. For example, Alabama began requiring that all midwives obtain a license, and then later required nurse midwives to practice only in hospitals. And so basically the changes, it affected like 150 of these midwives, specifically Black midwives, across the state practically overnight.
Oh, gosh.
Mm-hmm. And the public health nurse, Mary Breckinridge, founded the Frontier Nursing Service in rural Kentucky in 1925, which led to more formalized field of nurse midwifery, which also developed at this time. Breckinridge's racist rhetoric impacted Black midwives' entry into the nurse midwifery route, though Breckinridge has been, like, quote-unquote, creating a pathway for midwifery education and certification, basically where we didn't need one because it was already there. So, like, you don't need to glue something that's not broken. So anyway.
Gotcha.
Me, like, at this point, I was like,
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yep.
By the 1950s, due to state restrictions and racism, because that's going to be what this is about, y'all, almost all lay midwives, including many of the Black midwives, were systematically pushed out of the practice or ousted. This led to babies in all communities by the 1960s being born in the hospitals under the care of an OB. However, many midwives adapted to this change, embracing the opportunity to care for their patients with the benefit of formalized training programs. This was the case with Amanda Carey Carter, a fourth-generation midwife who delivered both Black and white babies in rural Piedmont region of Virginia, and she worked from the 1950s all the way to the 1980s. So to obtain her midwifery permit in Virginia, she was required to register with the local registrar, sorry, that's the only way you can say that word because it's like written ridiculously. Just saying. She had to attend classes in safety and hygiene and provide one or more letters of recommendation from local physicians. She obviously has to report on all births, and adhere to safety rules outlined in the midwife manual provided by the Department of Health. So she did that, and she delivered something like over 1,000 kids. Like she worked, yeah. And
wow.
There's a quote of her somewhere saying, like, yeah. And there's a quote of her somewhere saying, like, Yep, I delivered like 1,000 babies, all of them in good health. And she said, and you know what? My license doesn't expire until 1985. Like, and what are you going to fucking do about it kind of thing? Yeah. She was funny. And that was,
I like
her. Yeah, that's Amanda Carey Carter.
Okay.
Midwives, however, often face competition and exclusion from their practice by physicians who sought to exclude them from the profession. Many, however, midwives, like Mary Frances Hill Coley, a midwife in Albany, Georgia, had delivered over 3,000 babies.
That's so many more babies.
I know.
Wow, there's so many babies. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I thought 1,000 was so many. Like,
right? I know you said that. I was like, oh man, she's going to love this. I was like, I got a bigger one than that.
Whoa.
So she delivered over 3,000 babies. Pause for shock. She utilized the tools and training of the mostly white medical establishment to care for her most at-risk patients. So she did a 1953 documentary called All My Babies. She demonstrated how a well-trained lay midwife could deliver healthy babies even in the poorest conditions while acting as an intermediary between patients, nurses, physicians, and members of the local community. Yeah, so if it's kind of like if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing, is kind of what it turned into. Okay, so yeah. I thought that was just really interesting how they were like, all right, I mean, you're not going to actually tell me what to do. I'm just going to adjust and keep going. So, and it's a good thing they did, or the practice might have died out completely. Around the world today, midwives are still being utilized as main sources for maternal birth care in most thriving first world countries. The UK is known for having half of its birth delivered by midwives, while countries like Sweden and Denmark and France have numbers as high as 75% of midwifery delivered births. Well, in the US, midwives deliver under 10% of births.
I would have thought it would have been a little bit more than that. I mean, I know it's not as popular, but
it's not a big number.
Okay.
I probably just talk about it a lot, so it feels like it's a lot, but it's not.
Okay. Interesting, though.
Yeah. So today, the landscape of medicine for expectant mothers is very different from decades past. However, in the United States, as we touched on earlier, Black women are 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than a white woman. These disparities are often due to the variation in quality of health care, underlying chronic conditions, structural racism, and implicit bias. So, such is the case, ready? A real-world example here, for the professional tennis player Serena Williams. She nearly died the day after giving birth to her daughter when the hospital staff dismissed her concerns that she was suffering from a pulmonary embolism. Serena Williams. I did not know that. You probably did, but I did not. I
don't know if I knew that either.
I didn't know that.
But yeah, the like women's pain gets dismissed
all the time
already.
Yeah,
and
all
like,
the time.
And with
now try being Black.
Yeah, with like there's some, like you said, structural racism. There's some belief systems. I mean, I've just recently heard this repeated in terms of like Black people don't have the same amount of this or that or whatever or different pain tolerances or you know things like that have been perpetuated. Just the racism of just perpetuated, you know, and that echoes, and there's still some echoes of that. So I would imagine that I'm sorry, unfortunately I nod my head like I believe that even Serena Williams saying like I'm having XYZ problem, and they're like you're
Isn't
fine.
That a blood clot in your lung?
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
I
like
mean,
she could have died, dude. Like
Serena freaking Williams. I mean, athlete, right? I mean, supreme athlete,
world icon.
Like she is
how I look at her. Like everybody knows who she is,
right? Yeah,
I count you a world icon, and like I know that's just wild to me. I was like, holy fuck! So I included that. So there you go.
Wow,
had to. I was like. So this is across all economic and educational backgrounds. Doesn't matter if you're like upper middle class to high class to low class to my class, which somehow is
all the class.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you. Studies continue to show that the problem with the maternal mortality gap lies amongst the issues of racism and sexism, like you said. So I think back to these words quoted by Shafia Monroe. One of the darkest moments in U.S. history was the systematic eradication of the African-American midwife from her community, resulting in a legacy of birth injustices. And we're going to quote her again here at the end, but she does a lot of work. Well, I'll tell you here in a second. You should remember her name because she does a lot of work for midwifery, especially in Black communities who need it most, obviously, according to the numbers. There is still so much work to do to curb the problem in our birth culture in general. But knowing the history and supporting organizations that are making the difference for mothers to carry, like, for these people to carry out their mission and you know, to have this knowledge and whatnot is super important. So you can check out really any of my sources, but one of my sources specifically is the Black Midwifery Collective. They have a lot of resources and information available on their website. You can find them on social media and stuff like that. If you're curious, they have a bunch of steps that you can do if you want to get involved in that kind of stuff. If it is an exciting topic to you, it's all easy to find on their website. And I think you just put it in like where they can just click the link to go to it, right?
Yeah, I try to make everything a tried and true link.
I will put that one first when I send it to you. So listeners, watchers, anyone,
I'll put it under mentioned in the stories. That's usually where I'll put like specific links, and then your sources will also have stuff too.
And that one has a lot of good information for anyone that wants more. Go there.
Okay.
Their vision at BMC, so the Black Midwifery Collective, is to build a future where there's a midwife in every neighborhood. So pretty cool. And then Shafia Monroe works with them. So that's who this lady that a lot of people are quoting. And she was quoted across like almost all my sources. And I was like, hell yeah.
There's 3,000 babies?
No, she's a lady of today working now.
Oh.
Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How many babies has she delivered?
Probably a fuck ton.
4,000?
I didn't get a number.
Could it be more?
It probably is. There's a lot more people now. So
could there be 10,000 babies?
Right? Oh my God.
So she has
an army for
she's just like this.
She has an army for Isengard now.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So I'm gonna end with a quote from her about this topic so we can leave it on a higher note, so it's not too dour. The historical role of the African American midwife was one of hope and health. Those expertise helped define cultural perceptions of motherhood, protected, uplifted, and empowered women and men, and improved maternity care in communities across the entire nation. She carried valuable information passed on by predecessors across generations that positively impacted the social health and family structure and overall health of the community.
Welcome to the halfway point. It's a girl. You must be so proud. What a proud parent you are. The long history of Black midwifery in America. Maybe not a topic that you would have normally sought out, but isn't it amazing that when we start learning about all these other things about history, the importance and the impact of these things on history, like how all these babies were getting birthed by Black midwives. I mean, when Katie was saying they gave birth to the nation, she wasn't kidding. And this is one of the many reasons why women's history, Black history, maybe the things that are typically in the margins or you might not have heard about in your history class are so important to learn about because they add greater context to the historical picture. So we're so glad that you're here hanging out in the smoke circle with us. This is the time where I get to come in and remind you to please make sure that you are liking, subscribing, following the show on whatever platform you are listening or watching on. Make sure that you're also following us over on social media, or on Instagram at High Tales of History, or on TikTok at High Tales of History Pod. And if you want to be a part of that Best Buds Club, you know you want to. We have half-baked episodes over there. Those are our little mini episodes. We have historical movie nights on the big brown couch. We do some historical cooking in the kitchen. All kinds of fun stuff. We're hanging out over there. And if you are a Patreon member at any level, you get early access, 2 days early to be exact, to all of our episodes. So who doesn't want that? What a happy thing that is. That's patreon.com/High Tales of History. We'd love to see you over there. You can also just join as a free member. So that's something that you can do too if you just want to hang out and see what's going on. And thank you so much to those of you who are already Patreon members. We love you so much, and we really appreciate your support in helping us keep our proverbial lights on over here. And before we head over into part 2, I was wondering if you might be able to help your favorite history stoner sisters with something. We are really looking to grow with the podcast by getting into more eyes, moving up those charts a little bit. If you could please leave us a rating, a review, make sure that you're subscribed to us on YouTube or, again, whatever platform that you're listening to us on. These are all things that really, really help us out. Really hoping that this year gain a lot more reviews and ratings on our podcast. So wherever you're listening, I know on Spotify it's really easy. There's no reviews that you can leave, but maybe you can leave a note on the show. You can leave comments on the show themselves. That's really fantastic. We'd love to share that. Spotify just has like a star rating system. So just hit the amount of stars that you think we're worth. Hopefully 5, but I get it. Don't be too harsh. If you don't like the show, maybe don't leave us a 1-star review. If you don't like us, don't review. How about that? But on Apple or whatever platform that you're listening on, we would love it if you could just write a few nice words. So what that does is it lets the algorithms of the podcast overlords, it lets it know that, hey, this show is going somewhere and people like it. And we would love it if you could maybe say a few nice things about us, leave a little 5-star review. And then that lets the next person know that it's a good show to listen to, and it grows our smoke circle. It also just pushes the show because there are hundreds, there are thousands of podcasts out there, and there's lots of history podcasts. And so ratings and reviews can set our show apart from the rest. And also, we would just love you forever and ever and ever. Thank you so much. All right, let's get into part 2. In part 2, I'm talking about one of the coolest ladies that you're ever going to hear of the late 19th and early 20th century. She got in there, she rolled her sleeves up, really set the stage for what would become more investigative journalism for the 20th century. And she was just a go-getter kind of gal, and we like go-getter kind of gals around here. So without further ado, let's puff pass it on to part 2.
Yeah. That was a good one. That was a really good story, Katie, about Black midwives in America. Like it's important history. It's very interesting history.
I'd say it was important since nobody would have delivered babies without them successfully.
Right? I mean, yeah. That's really good. Thanks for bringing that. So, folks, we have jumped forward 24 hours. What? We've time warped over the break between the two stories.
Warp again. Okay, stop.
Yeah, it's just a hop to the left and then a step to the right. And but it's the pelvic thrust that really drives him in. Say yay, yay, yay.
TM, copyright.
Copyright, trademark. We finished Katie's story, and I was just commenting. I think I was still recording at the time that I was like, wow, it's so goddamn windy outside. What's going on? And then all of a sudden, Katie's power went out. So
and I was like,
next
well,
day.
shit. And I was like, actually, as that happened, I was like, oh, I wonder how far her garbage cans were.
They didn't move. I was so impressed. Actually, my really thin, flimsy yard waste bin just plunked over. That's it.
Oh,
but
okay.
That's like the really. That's one of those garbage cans you can get at the store. That's like that thinner plastic.
Oh,
and
yeah. My neighbor's is currently in my yard.
Yeah, one of those. Yeah, those ones that just kind of fly around everywhere.
It flew into the back of my trees. It's held up in branches right now, and I was like, I'm not getting that.
Mm-hmm.
They can come get it if they want it.
Yeah. Those have a little bit of lift and flight to them. But mine just fell over. It was so good. Nothing was messed up. It was great.
Good.
But it was
my
very
power
windy.
Went out.
Yeah. It was very windy. Poor Katie. Yeah. So I'm glad you're back. I'm glad it only was out for a few hours.
We're here.
And we're back to do this again the next day. So I have a bit of women's history for you. That's our unifying theme today, folks. I don't know if I mentioned that in the first half of the show yesterday. I was also so stoned. But our unifying theme today is women's history, and so I am bringing some women's history for you as well. And you know what? This is also, Katie, this is also coming out in Women's History Month.
Oh, man, I lined it up beautifully.
So really, between Black History, Women's History, tie those 2 months together, Women's History this month.
What can I say?
To go. So my gal is such a cool gal. I really love her life story. She is such a go-getter, and you're going to have a lot of these instances of go-getterism highlighted for you today in our episode, as she's been one I've been wanting to cover for a while. So we're going to start back in late 19th century, 1800s, okay? 1880s, to be more precise, right? And I want you to think of a young woman standing outside of the Women's Lunatic Asylum on Blackwell's Island.
Oh man, this took a turn.
We're jumping right the fuck in, folks. Buckle up, strap in, keep your arms and your legs in at all times. So the lunatic asylum on Blackwell's Island. Now today it is called Roosevelt Island. Roosevelt? Did I say Roosevelt? Roosevelt Island.
There you go.
The Roosevelts of American fame, and I was going to say New York fame, but I was like, yes, the Roosevelts, right? New York. A 20-year-old young woman standing there in front of the building, about to go in to be under care, basically. Her name is Nellie Brown, and she is going to be in this asylum for the next 10 days. But her name's not Nellie Brown. It's Nellie Bly, and even then it's not exactly Nellie Bly. She is an undercover journalist who is checking herself. No one did this at the time. Is checking herself into this asylum to be like, I'm going to see with my eyes and experience it with myself of what's going on in these sorts of places. Because women were being checked into quote unquote asylums all the time. She has this quote here from another newspaper. She said, "Let me say one thing. From the moment I entered the insane ward on the island, I made no attempt to keep up the assumed role of insanity. I talked and acted just as I do in normal life. Yet, strange to say, the more sanely I talked and acted, the crazier I was thought to be by all but one physician, whose kindness and gentle ways I shall not soon forget." So she's only in here for 10 days. But this woman, Nellie Bly, writes about how bad everything is behind these walls. We're going to meet Nellie Bly, born Elizabeth Jane Cochrane in 1864 in Cochrane's Mill, Pennsylvania. Now, the fact that she is a Cochrane living in Cochrane Mills is not a coincidence. Her father was very rich, and she was part of a large family. This is wild. So her dad was previously married. He had 10 children with his first wife. She had passed away. He married again, and he had 5 more children with his second wife. So Elizabeth, a.k.a. Nellie, which will be her pen name later, but we'll be calling her Elizabeth in her early years. She was born the third of those 5 children and is considered to be the most rebellious of those in the family. She's part of this huge family. Father's rich. They got a mansion. Like they're doing all right. But he died when she was only 6 years old. So her mother was basically left to take care of all the family.
15 children?
At least the 5.
Oh, okay.
I think, yeah. I don't know if the older 10 children had grown up a little bit more, like some of them were already out of the house.
Oh, but yeah, probably.
Yeah, but she has at least like Nellie and a few of her brothers and sisters, at least. But she has
That's enough.
It was just fine, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so she is struggling to support them. So Elizabeth attended local schools, but because of that, and this is a very common thing, if you need people to help work and feed the family, you drop out of school. And that was what she did. So she helped her, mother doing small jobs, helped running like a boarding house and things like that. Her mother got married again to a man that was not nice at all, very abusive. Nellie found that she really enjoyed reading and writing. And she liked reading various columns in the local newspaper. And when she's 18, she reads this article that's titled "What Girls Are Good For." No. We might maybe we all just had a little sigh.
Like, nah, wrong, champion. I got in closer. I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear this. This is going to be good. This is the moment when I reach in the comment section where I'm like, it's time to bust out the popcorn because it's getting good.
Mm-hmm.
It's about to get good.
Yeah. So this article is basically about, what women are good for, what their roles should be, and what their role in society should be too, and she's pissed, so she's at 18 years old. She writes a letter back and she lets this person have it. But they were really impressed with her writing, like how impassioned she wrote, like how smart and intelligent her response was,
how educated she was.
Yeah, and she was offered a job to write for the newspaper then because of her response. Done. Yeah, right. So Elizabeth, that's when she takes the name Nellie Bly, which was, which became her professional pen name. And in fact, if you really look up much of anything about her online or in books and stuff like that, she's almost always listed by Nellie Bly as her name in history. And thus she becomes a journalist. Big break as a journalist, right? So she's a columnist now, but got stuck writing pieces specifically addressing women's issues. Like that was all that she got she got this job, but she got like cornered into doing just those sorts of things. She's like, I actually want to like write big stories.
As per the usual, it wasn't what she expected.
Right. Like, she's like, oh, okay, I'm happy to write. I love doing this, but I want to write bigger, and I want to write for not just women. I want to write for men and women. I want to write for the people. And so she's trying to find newspapers that would allow her, a woman, to write on more serious topics. She's like, I just want to write more, please. So she's like, going to New York City. New York City is going to be the place where I'm able to do that. She moves from Pennsylvania to New York City, and she is having a hard time finding work. But at some point, she just busts into New York World, the New York World newspaper, which was Joseph Pulitzer's newspaper. So if you're familiar with the name Pulitzer, S. and Pulitzer Prize, we talked about him a little bit when we were talking about the history of comic books, like the history of comics in America. He got a little mention there when it comes to early comics. But she walks in there, she's like wanting to get a job. It's either like this moment where it's this bold challenge of like, okay, lady, yeah, how about you write this big ass story, about asylums? Or he was just like, I'm going to brush her off.
Mm-hmm. Give her an impossible task.
So I'm going to give her this big task and be like, all right, fine. Here, this is the story that we want to look into. And she's like, okay, I'll do that. So Pulitzer and also the managing editor at the time, Colonel John A. Cochrane, they're like, all right, we'll promise to get you out. But what she's going to do is go undercover to expose conditions here. All right, so we are back now in front of the Women's Lunatic Asylum on Blackwell's Island. Nellie Brown, which is actually Nellie Bly, which is actually Elizabeth Cochrane, is about to go in and be under care, quote unquote, for the next 10 days. During these 10 days, her investigation into the asylum exposed the brutal conditions, the terrible mistreatment that patients, mostly women, were enduring there. What she witnessed, she later described in her book, 10 Days in a Madhouse. Her reports were explosive. Everyone was like, wait, what? This is what's happening? And led to massive reforms in the treatment of the mentally ill. And so
thank goodness.
Threw her into, right, yeah, exactly. Like this is probably one of her most famous feats, is to go undercover at this asylum here and really expose terrible things that were going on. And it launched her into investigative journalist fame. So like I said, people weren't really doing investigative journalism yet, doing like some serious deep digging in order to get her story.
But before muckrakers.
Yes? I don't know. I don't know what that means.
They were around in the industrialization, so they would have been just after this.
Okay.
So like it's kind of like the beginnings of investigative journalism.
It is. That's the thing. This is really is. I mean, there might have been one other, maybe another couple of other people doing it to a certain degree, but this particular moment is huge in journalism because like this was like really the spark of somebody doing real investigative journalism for the first time. 19th century psychiatry is very disturbing when it comes to women. So like I said, like a lot of women were being put into asylums by fathers or husbands or brothers, to basically keep you quiet, keep you out of the way. You're too difficult. Not necessarily that they needed mental care. You know what I mean? Like they weren't necessarily mentally ill. They were just sent there because, family wanted them out of the way, or they had an opinion. Right. Exactly. So I have a article I've pulled up from Time magazine talking about this, about like all the different reasons why a woman might be sent to an asylum and how terrible it was. Really, a lot of things could stem from just menstrual cycle, mood swings or headaches, or all the laundry list of things that are PMS symptoms.
Yeah, huge, massive hormonal drop-offs tend to do that to the human body.
Right. So that would be called like uterine derangement. Just having your menstrual cycle could just throw you off, and all the things that uterine derangement.
Oh, I'll show you uterine derangement.
Right? There you
1880. You have
so
no idea. Now I will show you uterine derangement.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Period-related madness, I'm going to put that in some air quotes there, was so commonplace. Doctors were telling moms to delay the onset of their daughter's menstrual cycle by making them take cold baths, or don't eat meat, or read, because reading is good.
Don't you dare fucking read. That was my problem.
Don't read. Don't do that.
All the
You're
time
gonna get
in
your
middle
period.
school. What was I doing? Ridiculous.
So there's some things, honestly, like having an opinion, or having something to say that had like a whole bunch of like weird names of like basically just, speaking out. Here's this. Sorry, those with clitorises, gird your loins. A theory ran that women's sexual organs, this is from the Time article, caused her madness, so cutting off her clitoris would calm her. Doctors claimed a 70% success rate. No. Another treatment of the era included removal of the ovaries, injection of ice water inside intimate orifices, and the application of leeches and caustics to the genitals. Thanks, Time magazine. And so you just, unfortunately, submitting and just making yourself calm and small or quiet or meek or whatever it was, the mold that you were to be fit into, that was the only sort of way you could potentially get yourself back out again. It was a way of crushing and controlling women. Let's be honest. Sure, there might have been some mental illness in there, but just even then, that wasn't handled well either. It's not like, oh, you're mentally ill, you're good, you're in the right spot. They're gonna do all the right things to take care of you. Right. No, that wasn't the case either. So
we'll just do cocaine about it, little electric shock therapy, it'll be fine.
Yeah, like medicine wasn't great for your brain at that time.
Dude, and then in my story, we had opioid tampons, so it can't get much better in yours.
We had opioid tampons, exactly. Exactly. So it wasn't great, and a lot of women, girls and women, older girls and women were being sent to these places. So she has this huge expose on the asylum and on Blackwell Island, and bravo, Nellie Bly. And she wrote that in the book 10 Days in a Madhouse. You can actually read that book if you want to like really get into it. Nellie Bly is like the first woman to really enter the journal mainstream in the 20th century. And she's fucking cool because she's done like detective work with it too. She's about to do some more cool things though. She wants some adventure in her life. She's like, you know what? Let's get out of these terrible walls of this asylum. Let's get
this
the fuck out of here.
For me, I need more.
Let's get out in the great blue yonder. All right, we're gonna go around the world. It's 1888, and Bly goes to her editor at New York World, and she's like, I'm inspired. Jules Verne, he's got a pretty cool book called Around the World in 80 Days, in which his main character goes around said world in 80 days.
That's really funny. I was going to make that reference.
Yeah, no, this is for real.
I was like, in 80 days? And then you're like, in 80 days. I was like, oh.
In 80 days. You're not wrong at all. That book came out in 1873. It's 1888. And she's like, what if we do that? And we could see if we read it in 80 days. Like, won't that be fun? And he was like, you know what, kid? I think you got something, basically. So she prepares for this trip. A year later, it's 9:40 on, 9:40 a.m.
Reminds me of a real life version of a Toad, the Ichabod and Toad, the Disney's Sleepy Hollow with the Great Adventures of Toad. Or she reminds me of a real life like Mr. Toad. You know, where he just like busts in, is like, I've got an idea. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah, and she's wearing like a tweed coat and has like a little suitcase, something like that she is got going on. Yeah, she's kind of like that. And so it's 9:40 a.m. on November 14th, 1889, and she's setting out. She's on a ship. It's either setting out from Hoboken, New Jersey, or New York City. I've got two sources that say different things, so that's fun. But she's setting out on a ship.
Contention of opinions here.
It's the East Coast there. And she has got just a little suitcase. She's got a few changes of clothes. She doesn't have a whole lot because she's got to take a whole variety of modes of transportation to get around the world, in general, but especially in 1889. And she's going for it. She sets out on this journey. She goes by boat. She goes by steam train. She has rickshaws and a camel and mules and horses and all kinds of things that she is traveling on as she goes around the world. Did
the newspaper fund this?
Yes,
That's rad.
This is so much fun, right?
I love that they were like, absolutely, send her.
They marketed it so well, right? So not only is it now like an adventure that kind of like all the readers can sort of go on, because she's being like, today I've woken up, and
she's writing about it as she's doing it, right? Like with postcards and stuff, I'm assuming.
Morocco, I don't know. Yeah. I'm in Casablanca, whatever. And she's writing about it, and it was like an open like sort of contest, like how long is it going to take her to get around the world? Like what's your guess, right? So she's got all these entries coming in from people around the world. It ends up getting about 1 million entries to this contest too, and she's writing about it.
That's a big deal.
It's so cool.
It's still 1888.
It's 1889.
89. Okay. Yeah, big difference.
Yeah. Oh my God, not really. So all these guesses are coming in as she's going around the world. She has to, of course, stay resilient through this whole thing. So she has some delays. She has changes of transportation she has to do. But she is like, she keeps right on going. She's trucking right on through this thing. When she gets back to the States again, so she lands back in San Francisco, she takes a special train across the country back to New York City again, in which as she's going across the country, there's like, like you see it in movies, like as the steam train goes across the country, there's like little towns and people are like, yay! Yeah. And they got flags and fireworks and they're like, yay, special person going through our town on a train. That's what it was like. So as she crosses the country, people are super excited about it and cheering her on. And she arrives in an astonishing 72 days, 6 hours, and 11 minutes.
She beating
Jules Verne's guy. What is his name? Phileas Fogg. Hang on, let me find his name.
I was gonna say I'm not sure,
something
but
like that. Anyway.
72 days.
Yes.
She also went out on a mission. Like, didn't he like get sidetracked on some side quests? Like,
I'm sure I've not read any Jules Verne's books. I probably should. I should read more classics than I actually have. I feel like
Jules Verne is a good one to start at too. Like, I even like the way he writes, which is saying something, because I tend to be very picky about that. No offense to authors. I think it's just how my brain works. But like, I tried like, for instance, the Game of Thrones series. I just didn't really jive with how it was authored. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's not for me. I actually preferred the TV show. So that being said, except season 8, sour about it. Anyway, but yeah, Jules Verne is a good one to start with.
Yeah, so she did it. And there was somebody who later, a man who very shortly after then did it in a slightly shorter period of time. You know, it made me think almost of like, this is like a callback from my trainer days, but the 4-minute mile, it was impossible. It was thought to be impossible to run a mile in 4 minutes. People were like, it just can't be done. We get so close, but no one can ever do it in 4 minutes. And then finally one day it was broken. It was done. Like someone did it, whose name escapes me. And I feel bad because I feel like I used to remember the name. Sorry. I'll put it down here at the bottom of the screen.
I'll put it right there.
Put it right there, right here at the bottom. But once that happened, people frequently, more
once
and more
it gets done once, it happens more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How long did we go without maybe not the best analogy, but a Triple Crown winner in the United States in horse racing, and then it gets done again like a year or two after, and you're like, what the hell? Yeah. We waited 37 years for this.
Yeah. And now you can do it in a lot quicker amount of time than 72 days or 80 days or 60 days. 66, I think, is what that guy's new record was after Nellie's.
Okay,
but she was like saying, like, look, it can be done for one thing, and hey, women can do extraordinary things too. And her journey, of course, it like captures the imagination of the public and the world, right? So after her excitement and the fanfare of her trip around the world, Nellie comes back and she continues on writing. She writes some novels. She continues writing for the paper, and her career really flourishes here. But she really shifted her focus then to talk about social issues. She really focused on women's rights, labor conditions, social reform. World War I hits.
I was going to say, there was no shortage of stuff for her to write about. I'm going to be very honest with you. She had a lot of, around that time especially, there was a lot of material.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you've got all that second industrial revolution where there's all kinds of labor issues going on then, and women's rights in America. The 19th Amendment hadn't passed yet. That happens in 1919. So women suffragists, working on the right to vote, that's all going on as well too. And World War I then hits. She's like, hey, I'm going to go to Europe and I'm going to cover the war.
I was like, watch her be like,
from Europe,
hang out in the trenches.
Right. She's covering. Casually. Yeah, she covers the war from the countries, and that was like a huge thing. She was able to be a war correspondent, basically, and especially a female one during that time.
She kind of reminds me of like an 1880, early 19th century blogger. A little bit. Investigative reporter, but also blogger. Like, she's doing both, which is equally impressive. Actually, more impressive because she's doing 2 jobs, not just one. She's just out there. She's like, I'm just going to blog about my travels, but also I investigated this milk crisis or something, or the meat industry in Chicago, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Somebody read The Jungle in high school.
Gross.
Yeah.
I remember choosing to read that book, and...
You had a choice? I did not.
Yeah.
So that's a book. I hated the way it was written. And I was like, I'm going to be honest. I should care, but I don't. Because I said industrialization is what ruined the food industry in this country. And I got all sour about it and went hard. And my teacher's like, okay, you still have to read it. Like, if anything, you should be able to talk more educated about it. And I was like,
right.
Well, it's fucking dumb. And they're like, okay, but why?
Use that opinion and some facts together, Katie. Use that strong.
I'm better at it now. I do really well with that now.
Yeah, you do.
So.
But Yeah, no, we had a list of like great American classics that we were to
what
read.
What were your other choices?
Anything else, basically. It was a huge long list, and I was like, I'm going to read.
Pick The Jungle.
My teacher literally, like, she was sitting there waiting for my choice so she could write it down on her list, and she just like looked up at me. She's like, "Do you know what that book's about, right?" And I go, "Yeah," and she's like, "Okay,
alrighty then." Literally, and it's also
and I
like
read it, and I was fine, and I went up there and I did my report, and it was good.
Oh,
I was like,
bravo.
"Yeah, give me the hard one, or the gross one, or the one that people don't want to read, and I'll do it."
Oh, it was like it is one of the classics ones. That and what was the other one I read that did that? Where they're on the farm, but it's like Animal Farm, maybe?
Animal Farm, yeah.
Yeah, Animal Farm. So both of those books are just spirit crushers. Like, you're gonna learn, but you're gonna be crushed emotionally while you're doing it. And that's what those were to me. And it was like, it was rough. It was like, there was no, like, didn't even throw you a bone as far as like, you're gonna feel better at the end. You're like, literally spoiler alert, literally everyone has died. You're on your own now. There's one left, and it's gonna end like basically like horribly, but be like, oh, but this is what the story was about. And it's like, no, I got that. Yeah, it just, I'm also equally horrified as well. That's fine. You will now have no soul left after you finish this book. Happy learning.
Mm-hmm. And during this time, she also got married as well, too. So she had gotten married back in 1895, and her husband was...
As I say, pray tell what brave gentleman got on this adventure.
He's this millionaire. He's a manufacturer, Robert Seaman. He was the owner of the Ironclad Manufacturing Company, which is an iron company. She's got some money there in the bank, which is great. He passes away, though, unfortunately. He passes away. There is a huge age gap, by the way. She was 31. He was 73.
Maybe he looked good for his age.
Maybe good for his age. Maybe, I'm not here to like talk about
probably a gentleman of adventure, I'm gonna guess.
Mm-hmm.
If he, you know what I mean? Like, I'm guessing he was enchanted by her adventurous spirit.
Yeah, you adventurous young lady. You're so going around the world and everything. But they get married. But it's not a very long marriage because of that age gap, and he does pass away. But she takes over his business, and so like now she's adding entrepreneur, like
her resume.
Yeah, and she does a pretty good job with it. Like, because of her passion for social justice and social reform and like labor reform, she's a good boss when you're looking at like early 20th century iron industry, right?
Especially factory
work, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's said that she, was well liked by the people, that worked for her, and that she was like a fair boss and all those sorts of things. However, people might have liked her, but she might not have always had the best people working for her. One of her factory workers was embezzling from the company. So Nellie wasn't keeping like as close of an eye and realizing what was happening with the finances. And somebody's like skimming off the top. And the company ended up going bankrupt, which was...
That's a little bit more than
huge bummer.
Top.
Right? Like that much that it gets mismanaged that it like topples the company over time. So unfortunately, that was an L for her. So yeah, like I mentioned, we're also talking about women's suffrage as well too, and women's rights. And so she did a lot of reporting for that. She covered the women's suffrage procession of 1913 for the New York Evening Journal. There's an article that actually ended up like coming true, and she was talking about what the United States would look like if women had the right to vote, like how things would positively change, and like these are some of the things that could happen when women can vote, and this might change, and this is going to look better, and like we're going to have more diverse voices, and so it ended up being something that was true, because when you look back at the article, people are like, oh yeah, she had the right idea there. She's just really tenacious, really, with all of her reporting that she did, and the impact of her work it really laid the foundation for all the investigative journalism that happened since her visit to the asylum, especially for like modern day investigative journalism, especially when it comes to social justice, because it didn't just make headlines. It wasn't just some big thing that she did, like something like a stunt almost. I mean, she was really getting in there and not only experiencing for herself.
Like,
yeah, she checked herself into this place, right?
Yeah.
And really giving like these accounts, harrowing accounts of what's going on there. And so it wasn't just like shock journalism or stunt journalism. It actually made change.
It wasn't just for clickbait. It was for real research.
Yeah. Not clickbait.
Basically,
it was for real.
Yeah.
Exactly. So she really used her spirit to fight for equality in all forms and fight for change. Nellie Bly passed away of pneumonia on January 27th, 1922 in New York City at the age of 57. She was buried at the Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, New York. She's actually buried right next to her sister, and her gravestone carries an inscription that reads, "The truth is mighty and will prevail," which I think encapsulates Nellie Bly's, aka Elizabeth Cochrane's, unwavering belief in the power of truth and her lifelong commitment to exposing it. And that, everybody, is the story of
I'm glad you went
Nellie
second.
Bly and investigative journalism. Like what a cool lady she was. She's also been honored with a postage stamp during the Women in Journalism set that came out in 2022. I almost forgot to say that. Yeah, so there was like Women in Journalism that came out as like a special stamp set, and old Nellie's on there. Love it. Anyway,
that's good. That should be. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
glad you went second. Yours was a lot more uplifting, I feel like, than mine. Well, I don't know. Mine was uplifting, but like also it's like mine was more of a call to action where you're just like, just feels good to hear about, which sometimes is nice to end on.
Calls to action all around. Look at that look at all this social justice in our episode today. What? Why is that?
It's listen, the universe put it in my lap. It was a story that lined right up between Black history and women's history, and I was like, that's perfect.
It is. And that works so good. I really like that. It was a really great story. I knew those statistics, in terms of like
that was all very new for me. So when I saw, I was like,
still today. Yeah, still today. That's the disparity in the numbers and inequality there. So it's great to talk about it. It's great to talk about like the history behind it and why that's happened and why that continues to happen.
That's why I said to like check out my link, because they have a lot of like history information, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'll have all those links in the show notes. Nice. Okay. Well, I'm so glad I'm feeling healthier. That's good. This time of year sucks. Oh my gosh. Stupid February with its like super
it was like
cold,
100-degree difference.
And
did you see that? It was like -27 with the wind chill, and then it was like in the 40s, like within like 5 days of each other. It was like, that's literally 100-degree difference, y'all. And I was like, that's bullshit. Like, or something like that. I don't know. But we did have like a massive degree difference. And it was like, this is dumb. This shouldn't even like be a thing that is allowed to like happen in the real world. Yeah.
Midwest is such weird weather sometimes, but we're getting through it. We get it. We did it. We're healing. We're on our way. We're on that journey down the road.
Saving time is right around the corner.
More There's sunshine
on the horizon.
Yes, absolutely. And we have let's see, 6 more episodes to do for season 5, and we're gonna have so much more fun with it. Episode 97, 2 weeks from now. Like I said, we've got some guests coming up for the season. We have some fun things that we're going to be doing. Katie and I get to spend some time on the big brown couch watching a movie for an upcoming episode, and we're talking about some divination stuff in an upcoming episode, and nautical doomed nautical expeditions
Ooh.
with people who know a thing or two about nautical expeditions. So like
Spooky boats.
we're gonna have some fun stuff coming up for you. We look forward to doing that again in a couple of weeks. Make sure that you are following us over on Instagram at High Tales of History or on TikTok at High Tales of History Pod. And that's where we're hanging out the other days of the week. Or if you're like, hey, I want to also hang out on the big brown couch and watch movies, or get mini episodes and get early release to the episodes as the regular episodes as they come out, you can hang out with us at the Best Buds Club over on patreon.com/High Tales of History, or just search High Tales of History in the search bar of the homepage of Patreon. And there we are. We're over there. You can even sign up for free. So if you don't want to be a full sign up yet for, the Best Buds Club, you can still just sign up and get news and see how are things. Get to look in, peep in the window, out what's going on in there. I can see you guys. I see you over there hanging out, watching movies. I see you guys over there cooking. I see you guys listening to some half-baked episodes with more women's history over there. So we have a few different things going on. We'd love to see you there. Also, would love to see you again in a couple weeks. So make sure that you are following, like, subscribe, so that way you are notified when that next episode comes into your feed. And in the meantime, folks, get money, get high, give love, and
keep up the can-do attitude. That's kind of the theme I feel like that ended up, because obviously you guys had that strong sense of adventure in your story, and that very tenacious attitude, but also the adaptability and tenacity of said midwives, just keeping it real and being like, all right, we'll adjust and conquer.
Adjust, conquer, can-do attitude, resist.
Even in the face of opposition, do not be cowed, dear listener.
Yes, here we go. We need that. We need that message right now. Love you all, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.